Settling isn't a relationship problem, it's a nervous system pattern. Most people don't settle because they want less. They settle because their body is tired of fighting, tired of explaining, tired of hoping, and tired of emotionally starting over. My name is Roneshia, and I'm an inner healing and deliverance coach for high achieving women who look flawless on the outside, but they are quietly crumbling. This conversation is not about men versus women. It's about conditioning versus clarity. Until we understand that, we'll keep making decisions that look mature on the outside, but feel heavy on the inside. This is especially for the woman who looks put together. You love God, you hit goals, you're dependable, and you are strong for everybody else. But privately, you're slowly dissolving on the inside because you're the one that holds everyone else together. The one adjusting, the one understanding, the one carrying everyone's emotional weight quietly. I want to be very clear about what this video is not. This is not a blame video. This is not a breakup video. I mean, unless you knew, like, now some of y'all know y'all were supposed to leave. But anyway, this is not me telling you what decision to make. This is a psychology, identity, and pattern awareness conversation so that you can make clearer choices without shame, without rushing yourself into another survival-based decision. I want to talk about settling the way psychologists and trauma-informed practitioners do, not the way they argue about it on social media. Online, settling is just framed as weakness, desperation, or low standards. But in real life, settling is what often happens when a nervous system learns peace from endurance, not alignment. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why settling happens, how it tends to show up differently in men and women, and how to tell if you're actually at peace or if you've just been avoiding the truth because you're exhausted. Let's start by redefining what settling is because most people are using the word wrong. Settling is not compromise, settling is not maturity, and settling is not being realistic. Compromise happens when two regulated people adjust without abandoning themselves. Maturity still allows truth, and being realistic doesn't require you to silence your intuition. Settling is something else. I'm not going to hold your hand when I say this. Settling is chronic self-abandonment. It's choosing familiarity over alignment. It's staying in something because on a nervous system level, change feels unsafe. This is why psychology matters, because the brain doesn't choose what's best. It chooses what's familiar. In your nervous system, it doesn't prioritize happiness. It prioritizes safety. So if chaos, emotional distance, inconsistency, and overfunctioning feels familiar to your body, your system will call that home even though your soul knows better. This is often driven by attachment conditioning, what you learned early on about love, closeness, and safety. It's driven by the fear of abandonment or rejection, the quiet belief that if you ask for more, you might lose everything. And it's driven by scarcity beliefs, the idea that time is running out, options are limited, and oh yeah, this is the best that you can expect. And then there's nervous system fatigue, that moment where you're not even fighting anymore. You're just tired. Tired of starting over, tired of explaining, tired of feeling like the emotional barometer in the relationship. Settling is rarely a conscious choice. It's usually a survival strategy that stayed past its expiration date. And this is why high functioning women almost never say, I'm settling, even though they are. Here's what they do say. I can handle it. Well, I've handled worse. It's not that bad. I don't want to disrupt everything, you know? That's where that quiet resentment starts to grow. Not because you're ungrateful, but because somewhere along the way, your needs became negotiable. And your nervous system learned to call endurance love. Now, here's where this shows up differently in men and women, and that distinction matters. Women don't necessarily settle more, but we're conditioned to endure more. That conditioning starts early. Women are trained to preserve connection. When I start lying, y'all come get me. We're taught to just smooth things over, to be flexible, to just absorb emotional weight quietly. You're praised for patience. You're praised for understanding. You're praised for holding it down. POP, holding it down. This man just got 25 years to life and he wants to know if you're going to hold it down. Over time, endurance gets confused with love. Many women are taught directly or indirectly that love is proven through sacrifice, through long suffering, through just staying and sticking it out, even though it would be easier to leave. So when a woman begins to settle, it rarely looks dramatic. It looks reasonable. It looks loyal. It looks mature. It sounds like, well, he's not abusive, so I should be grateful. And when she says he's not abusive, she means he hasn't physically hit her yet. But baby, emotionally, she the punching bag. It also sounds like, well, I don't want to ask for too much. I just need to explain myself better. Well, she finds a way to blame herself. So instead of enforcing boundaries, she over explains them. She confuses potential with reality, not because she's naive, but because she's empathetic. And she believes that loyalty means staying even when alignment is gone. This is why women often settle emotionally long before they ever settle with their decisions. They check out emotionally first. They go quiet first. They shrink first. A woman will tolerate emotional neglect longer than disrespect because neglect feels familiar and familiarity feels like safety to an unhealed nervous system. Neglect doesn't always feel like rejection. Sometimes it feels like normal. Sometimes it feels like childhood. Sometimes it feels like what you always had to make peace with. So you'll build empires, you'll fund visions, you'll intercede for everyone's breakthrough, and you'll do it while quietly starving emotionally. You have normalized being the strong one instead of being the seen one. And I want to say this clearly. This doesn't make you weak. It means your capacity is high. But high capacity without boundaries turns into quiet depletion. Now, men settle too, but it looks different. I don't know why, whenever we talk about settling, people just automatically assume that this woman settled for this man. Baby, it's a lot of men out here settling when it comes to relationships, and these women. I've talked to some and I'm like, baby, why are you dealing with that? Why? You need to know that understanding the difference between a man settling and a woman settling matters more than blaming a side. This is where a lot of conversations go sideways because we try to measure men and women by the same emotional metrics, and this is not going to work. Men tend to settle logistically, not emotionally. Most men are socialized to prioritize ease, peace, and predictability. They're often taught implicitly to avoid emotional discomfort, to minimize conflict, and to keep life manageable. So staying isn't always about passion or depth. It's about stability. It's about routine. It's about not disrupting what works. This is why some men stay, because a relationship is good enough. Life flows, the house runs, there's companionship, and there's familiarity. But emotional depth stays limited. Not because he doesn't care, but because vulnerability feels like exposure. For many men, emotional depth feels risky. It threatens control. It introduces uncertainty. So instead of settling for less love, they settle for less emotional exposure. Comfort can become a cage when growth is always scheduled for later. Now, here's the part I want you to hear without defensiveness, especially if you are a woman who carries a lot. If you're the woman who makes life easy, stable, predictable, emotionally smooth for everyone else, you'll often be the one a man settles with logistically while remaining emotionally half present. Not because you're lacking, not because you're not enough, but because your strength made comfort easy. And comfort doesn't automatically invite growth. Baby, unless you start choosing differently for yourself, emotionally, energetically, relationally, the dynamic stays the same. Here's where this becomes especially important for high achieving women, because the women with the most capacity are often the ones who settle the quietest. This conversation is about to hit home for a lot of you. High achieving women are used to pushing through discomfort. You've learned how to override your feelings to get results. You know how to keep moving even when something doesn't feel right. So dissatisfaction gets reframed as discipline, as maturity, as something you just push through. You tell yourself, well, I've handled worse. I've dealt with worse, so it's not that bad. I don't want to be dramatic. And slowly, your endurance gets mistaken for emotional health. Achievement has a way of masking emotional neglect. When you're achieving in every other area, there's less urgency to confront what's misaligned in partnerships. At least everything else is working. At least you're productive. At least you're not failing. But high capacity doesn't equal high fulfillment. Sit with it. If you learned to earn love through performance, you'll tolerate relationships that require constant proving, not because they're aligned, but because they feel familiar. I'm not going to hold your hand when I say this. Just because you can survive something does not mean you're anointed to stay there. You can love God, be generous, be powerful, be respected, and still be quietly settling in partnership. Publicly applauded, but privately underchosen. This isn't an indictment of your discernment. It's an invitation to listen more closely to what your body and spirit has been trying to tell you without shaming yourself for how you learned to survive. You all can probably hear them outside mowing the grass. So now the real question becomes this: how do you tell the difference between settling and genuine peace? I need you to listen to this part with your body, not just your mind. Most women honestly don't need more advice. They need clearer discernment. So let's talk about the difference between settling and peace, not just conceptually, but somatically. Settling often feels like tightness in your body, a constant bracing, a holding, a subtle clenching that you just learned to live with. It shows up as a low grade resentment. Nothing explosive, but just enough to keep you from fully relaxing. It can feel like emotional numbness, not angry, not heartbroken, just muted. You start over editing your voice, choosing your words carefully, swallowing thoughts before they can reach your mouth, and eventually self silencing becomes normal, all in the name of I just want to keep the peace. Peace feels different. Peace feels like expansion and softness in the body. Your shoulders drop, your breath deepens. You don't have to rehearse being yourself. Peace feels like emotional safety without shrinking. There's a mutual effort, not just one person carrying the emotional weight. Your nervous system feels regulated, not on constant alert. And you're free to be honest without fearing punishment, withdrawal, or distance. Peace does not require your disappearance. So if staying costs you your voice, your values, or your vitality, that's not peace. That's compliance dressed up as maturity. And noticing that doesn't mean you have to do anything today. It just means telling yourself the truth. And truth is always the beginning of peace. So let's slow this down even more and give you a moment to check in with yourself. We're going to pause for a moment, not to make a decision, but to let what you've heard actually land. I want to offer you a few questions. These aren't questions you answer out loud. These are questions you let sit with you without rushing to explain anything away. Ask yourself, do I feel deeply chosen here or just tolerated because I'm useful? Am I staying because I genuinely desire this or because I'm afraid to disrupt what looks stable? Does this relationship expand me or does it just manage me? Ask yourself, if my daughter lived this exact dynamic, would I call it healthy? I want you to hear this clearly. Awareness is not pressure, it's permission. You are not required to make a decision today. You are not behind, and you are not failing because something finally has your attention. Your body has been telling you the truth longer than your mouth has. This isn't betrayal. This isn't rebellion. This is just you catching up. And before we end, I want to leave you with this one final thought. This video isn't here to tell you to stay, and this video isn't here to tell you to leave. It's here to remind you that your heart, your body, and your spirit deserve honesty. You don't owe anyone confusion. You don't owe anyone silence. And you don't owe anyone endurance at the expense of your own aliveness. Before we wrap up, can I share something with you? You don't need all the answers today. You don't need to make a decision right now, but you do need clarity before decisions. And you do need a regulated mind and body so you can actually trust your discernment again. Honey, when your nervous system is exhausted, even wisdom feels like confusion. Clarity doesn't come from forcing answers. It comes from settling your inner world first. If this conversation stirs something in you, that's clarity knocking. The clarity reset is for the woman who is done making relationship decisions from survival, exhaustion, and emotional autopilot. It's for the woman who is ready to choose from self-trust, regulation, and wholeness. It's a 7-day emotional and mental reset that helps your nervous system exhale, your mind quiet down, and your spirit remember what aligned love actually feels like. There's no rush, there's no forcing, just an invitation to meet yourself honestly and gently. You're not late, you're waking up. And a fully awake woman makes different choices. That changes everything. This video stirred something in you. Don't rush to make a decision. Start with clarity. Most women don't settle because they lack options. They settle because their nervous system is tired and their identity has been undernourished. The clarity reset helps you regulate, untangle emotional patterns, and make aligned decisions from self-trust, not fear or exhaustion. Clarity changes everything.